LinkedIn, and many people may be wondering, why is LinkedIn at a COP? And the reason we're here is pretty simple. All of the climate commitments that we make, companies make, governments make, require a workforce to get it done. And we do research on this every year because you and 1.2 billion of your friends all have LinkedIn. What we see is that demand for green skills is growing twice as fast as supply. And that's what sets us up for a bottleneck. Is this going in and out?
Yeah, you got to hold up to your chin.
Like,
literally hold it to your chin.
Yeah. All right. So, therefore, we got to figure out how is it that we can build a workforce and accelerate green skills development. We also know that workers with those green skills fare better in the labor market. In fact, their hiring rate is 46.6% higher than the workforce overall. That's a big, big difference. So, I'm really excited. We have this esteemed panel here to talk about what it's going to take to build the workforce for Australia's net zero transition. I'll have them each introduce themselves. We'll start with Maddie. And when you introduce yourself, can you tell us your name, your affiliations you're bringing with you today, and how did you start working on climate, or did you just kind of fall into it?
My name is Maddie. I work as a data analyst at Origin Energy, and I'm a student ambassador for the Monash Energy Institute. I have always wanted to work on climate. I think I actually went back home a few weeks ago, and I found a book that I used to read when I was like 10, and it talked about climate change. And I kind of think that was the moment I was like, I want to do this. And I've never changed since. Even going through, I've done some chemistry and different stuff. I've always wanted to contribute to climate change and work on the problem.
Hi. Oh, I think that was not working. Okay, I'm putting it to my chin. Hopefully you guys can hear. Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm here from Aviva, which is an industrial software company. And I was inspired, I think, throughout my schooling. We had really great geography teachers, and they were always talking about climate change, which back in those days was all around acid rain in Northern Europe, which was a huge issue. Obviously, it's gone way beyond that as well. I was also introduced at a very young age to an incredibly inspirational book called Dinosaurs and All That Rubbish. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's definitely worth a read. And if you have small children, I really recommend it because it's a brilliant way of showing the impact of climate change and how biodiversity can actually overcome climate change. And we're here really to spread the story around how digitalization can support very materially the development of new skills. Also, AI is not necessarily something to be frightened about. It's something that can plug the gap between skills development. The LinkedIn stories come out just 2 weeks ago saying that 60% of Gen Z don't think that they've got the skills to support the new green economy, and we would argue that's absolutely not the case. So really excited to get into the discussion.
Thanks. So my name is Marcus Dorr. I'm the CEO of MCI Carbon. So we're a technology company that transforms emissions into materials. So this is called a carbon capture and utilization technology. So I started this company 18 years ago, or formed the initiative 18 years ago. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I found myself at 33 either retiring or doing something beneficial for the world. So I thought climate change is a big, hairy, audacious goal that I want to get together. And so I now stand and sit here in front of you with 70 people in Australia that are committed, actually on mission to get our technology and to make a difference. What's significant is that we've grown twice in the last year. So all of those people have come off traditional jobs in fossils, in mining, in the transition. So we are living the transition, really. And what's exciting is that not are they just doing roles and jobs, they're able to actually apply their purpose. And so with climate change and most of the people here, we see people with purpose. And purpose is required far beyond just the jobs and the skills. But this brings us together and allows us to collaborate, because it's actually collaboration that will help us solve climate change.
I love the stories you all talked about, how you kind of found yourself working on this. So it's really interesting. Maddie, think about like when you were a kid, how that influenced you. Like I remember playing SimCity as a kid, and like that taught me that like nobody wants to live near pollution. and all I ever wanted to do was build windmills. But and windmills were the cheapest power. So like it was just, it's clear like SimCity 2000 was ahead of its time. I think what's funny, interesting for me is I don't necessarily think of myself as a climate professional, which is funny to say that at COP. I'm a workforce and economic development professional who wants to deal with the biggest trends in the world of work, wants to help more people participate in the economy. And it's impossible to do that work today and not think about the way that climate change is an opportunity, that this new economy is going to present so many opportunities for people, and that it's going to change so many jobs that we have to help people navigate that. So for me, that I think has been, a realization. It's not what I got hired at LinkedIn to do, but it's become such a big part of what I do because we see in our data, and I think when we talk to people, we talk to companies, that climate change is driving so many of these decisions. In fact, one of the things we've been tracking is that the share of green hires at companies has been growing year over year, every year. And what's fascinating about that stat is this year is the first time that the majority of green hires don't have green titles, they just have green skills. So they're being hired into a variety of roles. I actually went to school to study city planning. That's how much I like SimCity. And that's not a job that has sustainability in the title. But that's a job that if you think about how land use is such a powerful tool for driving climate action and preparing for adaptation, you can't be an urban planner today and not engage with some of these climate targets. So we're in the Amazon. For none of us here, that was an easy place to get to. Maddie just told us she spent 55 hours trying to get here. So why? Why do you spend so much time to get to COP? And Maddie, I know we had the similar conversation in Baku last year, and you also took a long time to get there. So what is it about COP that is so important for you as a young person, as a student, someone early in your career to be here?
Yeah, I think there's reasons I'm here. We're sponsored by the Monash Energy Institute, and we're really lucky to be at a university that value students and student voices getting into these spaces. But on a more personal note, I think I'm a software engineer in mathematics. I just finished my course. And I think there's so much that people like me, people without a law, economics, policy background, so much that we have to contribute to these spaces. And I wanna show that to the people back at home, and I want to be able to be that example that I couldn't see when I was coming into uni, because there are a lot of people coming into uni that they are climate curious. They want to work on climate change problems, but they go into a technical degree and they lose that over the course of their degree, and that's sad. There is so much to do in the climate space, and we need people interested in climate with the skills to fix it as well.
Thank you. So coming from London, it only took me 21 hours to get here. So I feel like this was a short hop for me. So one of the things that we're passionate, and we have a delegation here supporting the UK Pavilion, but we want to make sure that the positive stories of the action that's already happening are getting out there. So we understand that there's a lot of appetite, but there's also a lot of fear, I think, among Gen Z, to the workforce, around what the climate and what AI is going to do to the working opportunities. And actually, we want to share some amazing stories that we have of how there's really positive opportunities. So a great story from Australia is we work with TasWater in Tasmania, and through the optimizations that our team has managed to develop, TasWater can operate 20% more efficiently, and also because they're letting less effluvium out into the actual bays around Tasmania, the local oyster population has been able to recover and grow by 50% in the last 20 years. So there's some amazing stories of how that's industrial AI at work. It's not taking anybody's job. It's not causing the decline of the environment, quite the opposite. So it's kind of an amazing story of these AI-empowered oysters. We have a similar story in Spain, where we work with a water utility called Acciona. They have empowered their team in the field with drones so that they don't have to travel as far. They reduce their carbon footprint. The drones overflow the water reservoirs, and they actually measure the life cycle of the shrimp in the water. So they use AI to predict the life cycle of a shrimp. They know that, a shrimp is going to reach maturity in 21 days, whatever that is. And they use the growth of the shrimp as an indication of their foodstuff, which is algae, that they actually need to monitor in the water to make sure that the water isn't toxic. So these are incredible examples, practical examples that are happening in the world today of how digital transformation, industrial AI is actually enabling a more biodiverse environment, is enabling lower carbon. And we really want to show these inspirational examples so that people can kind of understand and get passionate as we are about working in this sector. So thank you for this opportunity, LinkedIn.
I agree. It's all about storytelling. It's all about the stories that encourage us, give us hope, but also the collaborations and open up possibilities. So I'm here actually telling a story about we're now open for business with our technology, having been in development for 13 years, continuously funded by the federal government of Australia, and now with Japanese investors and with customers around the world emerging. And one is in Brazil. So actually, timing is everything. And we're here talking to some very big industrials who are very keen on our technology. But importantly, back for my people back in Australia, we're really representing the purpose of our people and collaborating. That's collaboration is it. This is my tribe. These are the people. These are my people. There's so much goodwill here, but we need to be ambitious. We need to we really need to lead with that aspirations. Not be unrealistic, but actually be, really lead with that. It's so important. Hope is not, people say hopium, but actually not. I think, you need to have climate hope. And we're here to say that there are technologies emerging now that can avoid the emissions now and reduce the emissions and basically get to our, net and negative in emissions. And we're here to tell that story. I've been in a couple of panels. There's a wide variety of discussions and stories. We need to be telling those stories. They need to be getting out there.
I think it's not surprising in this moment where AI has been getting so much of the conversation that two of the people on this panel are directly involved in technology, either as someone who's been involved with software or a company that is so focused on AI for shrimp and oysters, and among other things. But I actually, we hear so much about how AI is, AI for sustainability is going to be help unveil new things faster, things that we may not have found, process improvements. I mean, we hear stories about you found new battery chemistry using AI. But obviously, one thing that is clear is that the green transition and the digital transition are much more intertwined than I think we often talk about. And I think Catherine, what you're describing at Aviva is like so much of that in action. I'm curious what that means for the workforce, though. Like, how is it that you build these skills together? What does it mean? Because for someone to learn to leverage these AI tools, is there some new role created, or is it people's jobs changing to begin to integrate these new tools and capabilities?
So I think I'll talk a little bit, and then you need to bring our chief technologist in, because it's very interesting, this space. So I think essentially a lot of the skills that people already have are skills that will be needed in the green economy. So Maddie here doing data science, that's exactly the kind of skills that the green economy needs. And it's really about how we adapt our thinking. It's a new mindset. And exactly as you said, we call it radical collaboration, this idea that different groups who might not have collaborated before come together. So a really great example of this that we see is the development of digital ecosystems where different skills are coming together. And we're actually working with the Port of Kwinana in Australia to bring together lots of different port authorities, some of the operators in the area, to pool information and data. And the skills that you need to do that are the same. It's kind of data analysis, it's collaboration skills, it's communication skills to actually build the networks. So people have that knowledge and ability. The other thing that I think is interesting is industrial AI is often seen as an ogre, but actually it can help to plug the gap. So the other thing that we find is that Generation Z, as they come into the workplace, may have less appetite to kind of do the actual analysis that is required, but the AI can empower them with the insights that they need without having to do all of the analysis. Now that opens up some interesting ethical questions around where it's appropriate for AI to kind of make a decision on behalf of somebody, or where they need to actually go into the detail. And Maddie, it'll be interesting to hear your insights on that. You'll be able to do both. But I think there's a real enabling element here. Like from Tas Water or from the example I gave you with the AI shrimp, the workers are being empowered with the AI to make better decisions that drive sustainability. And it's actually very intuitive from them, from their point of view. So really exciting to see this happening.
You know, that you bring up something that we see in our data, which is that systems thinking ends up being this like a skill, and that is the green skill that makes a difference. Because what systems thinking really is all about is seeing how different things fit together, and it's about seeing relationships between things that you may not have seen. So, for example, one thing that we can see in our data is that workers with green skills have an advantage. So, one example of that might be that you have two software engineers are finalists for a job. One of them in the code review talks about how they can measure the energy load of the code they write. And the hiring manager probably doesn't have a responsibility for emissions reductions, but what they do care about is who has the most comprehensive view of how what they do, the code they write, interacts with the rest of the company's priorities. And of course, now with AI, that energy is a much more material cost for these companies. And so but what makes that engineer who thinks about that is they can see how things fit together, and that becomes a real advantage.
You want to say something on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So everyone who's employed by my company, MCI Carbon, they have to have three core skills. They have to have an expertise, but they actually have to have three soft skills. One is they need to be able to critically think. Critical thinking is one of the most important skills of any employee. Then complex problem solving. They need to know how to solve complex problems. The other is they need to be able to work in teams. So team collaboration. And those three are the core to our knowledge workers. Everyone who works for us are knowledge workers. Doesn't matter what they do. So, and that's the frame by which we need to actually start thinking about these jobs and skills.
I think that's just so spot on. We see that so much in our data. You know, Marcus, you shared earlier that a lot of the people who work at MCI Carbon, they came from traditional energy and industrial fields, perhaps made from major emitters. And I think one thing that we often don't realize is what jobs people held before they found their way into this. And I'm curious if you could kind of maybe, are there any, who are the workers who end up working at MCI Carbon, and what does that say about the kind of CCS space? And two, what misconceptions might we have about those workers, and kind of what value they provide for companies like yours?
So we're in Newcastle, our technical headquarters in Newcastle, Australia. So the biggest coal export terminal in the world. So 80 million tons of coal shipped into the region. Now, these people have come off the coal mines. They've come off these fossil companies. When we advertise now, when we're looking for people, engineers, so everyone from process engineers, chemical engineers, but also mechanical, electrical, it's really significant. They now apply. We get more than 100 applicants for every job. And what's important is the ones that shine through are the ones who say, you know what, I've been working for companies, but I have not felt they've been aligned with our values, my values. We are a values-led organisation. I think this is the difference as well, is that many of the companies that are actually working on climate solutions or the transition have more than just the economical bottom line. And people now are actually looking to apply their values, their purpose to that. So there's a different lens as well that we apply, and that we get not just the minds of people, we get their hearts as well.
One thing that we hear all the time is that companies can't find talent who want to work on this or who are capable of working on this, and then the same people who are so passionate about this say they can't find the jobs. And I think what I actually hear from when I kind of pull the envelope back with companies, with employers, what they really want are people who care about this. What they actually are looking for is not a specific skill. Like, they can't tell you what the skill is. It's really what they want to know is, do you really care about this? And they're looking for signals that they understand in HR speak that represent those signals, and which often maybe it's some random credential or certification, but really they know that so much of what their job requires is learning on the job, no matter where you came from. They really want to know, is this something you're going to work hard at? Is something you care about? And I think you're getting very much at that point.
Look, I just want to, I don't want to dominate a conversation here, but I'm the last person they talk to before they join my company. So they go through a process, and then I talk to them and I say, who are you? Who are you? What, tell me about your family. Tell me about what you care about. I talk to them as a human, and I say, are you up for the mission? We have a mission to lock away, to get our technology. If it can work, we want it to work. Are you up for that mission? If they stumble, they stall, they don't quite understand what I mean, they're not our people. And then I also say, this is terribly, you are going to be in the deep end here. This is, we're very, we're on a big mission. What happens when, say, you've given something, you're busy and we're given a new priority? How does that make you feel? If they don't thrive on that, they're not one of us. They have to thrive on the challenge. And so again, this is the kind of process.
The skill of the year from LinkedIn in 2024 was adaptability. And one of the things that we see is that green skills really end up being about adaptability, helping companies navigate a changing environment. I think you're talking very much about that. This environment is changing, the business environment is changing, the business challenges are changing. So part of what you have to do, part of what being in this space means is you're going to have to be adaptable. And what I think when we talk about green skills being increasingly valuable in non-green titles, what we actually mean, one thing we mean, is that companies increasingly value people who are going to be nimble and be able to deal with those changes. And green skills actually are one ways that you represent that.
I'd like to say something around that, though, because I think sometimes we as employers and also as people already in the working environment have a duty to paint the picture that that's not something that's unattainable for people. Actually, it's very achievable to be part of a green workforce. As I say, Maddie's got the skills, but I'm sure loads of people in your university have as well. And one of the things we need to do is to kind of create this sense that it's a positive, achievable, tangible thing that you can be part of this, and it's happening now, and actually it's open to lots of people. So I was saying to Maddie beforehand, my undergraduate degree is in English literature. It's not a conventional thing that you'd expect me to be sitting here at a climate conference, but we need storytellers, just like we need data analysts, just like we need engineers. So everybody has something that they can bring, and one of the critical things that we as employers need to do is to create, yes, that vision, and we're absolutely a values and a data-led company, but also that belief that everybody can contribute and that everybody's contribution is valuable. So I think that's so important as a kind of climate movement as well, to understand that this is something that's open, that everybody needs to play their part.
Love that. Maddie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think how you do that, and something we often see, I don't know how reflected it is in what you've seen in industry, but something we often see at university is that companies will jump in at their students' final year of uni, and they'll go, we have a graduate program, get in, you better have the skills we need. Well, they don't. If you're engaging with them in the graduate program in the first instance, you've missed the boat 3 years ago, Other sectors, and I'm speaking for the energy sector now, but other sectors are much better at getting in when a student starts uni, or even in high school, and actually creating and shaping the skills they want to see when that student then gets out of uni after their final year.
There's a really interesting group here from the climate science group at Exeter University. You should go and see them. You guys out there should go and see them. But they're talking about exactly this, creating what they call green corridors that don't just start at the end of university, but that start in schools. So I won't say any more, but go find them.
I want to come back to that point in a second. Maddie, you and I did a pretty similar conversation to this in Baku last year. That's a year ago. A lot's changed in the world. I'm curious, as you think about, now you're actually about to graduate, finish school, take your exams. What for you has changed in the last year as you think about kind of career opportunities in this space, as you think about your own career, and as you are kind of entering the working world full time, how prepared do you feel your education, your formal education, made you for that moment, and what was the stuff you wrapped around that education that got you to feel more prepared?
Yeah, I think on what's changed in the last 12 months, I think two things I've noticed a lot. The first is that we talk a lot about how the talent pipeline, the LinkedIn report, the talent pipeline is struggling. I think at home and in the energy sector, I've really started to see that materialize in a lot of obvious ways. Like, for example, electrical engineers are being hired into a lot of non-technical jobs, and it's because they know the energy industry, and the energy industry needs non-technical jobs, but they need people that know the energy industry. So I think, and a lot of those people will be fantastic at their jobs, right? But we already have an electrical engineering shortage. So I think that's a clear kind of way the industry is starting to struggle and try to adapt to that, but it's struggling. The other thing is, I think in the energy sector, as we've talked about quite a lot, tech and software has really kind of set down roots and is here to stay. What hasn't changed is that, like, students don't know any of this. Students still don't know, like, you know, I'll say, you know, a while ago, if I said I'm interested in energy and I want to get into software or data, people in the industry might say, oh, why? Not anymore. People in the industry know the importance of data and tech. Students do not. I get the straight, like, I forgot to say, but this year I led the energy club at Monash, and we do a lot of work to kind of connect students with industry, and they are so shocked when they hear I'm like a software student and maths, like, but it's so important in industry, and they need to know that. In terms of how prepared I feel very prepared, but obviously the average student doesn't have the exposure to industry that I've been lucky enough to have. And it's not my education that's prepared me for the energy industry, and it would be unfair to expect any education to prepare someone for an industry that changes that fast.
I think that definitely speaks to the importance of gaining industry experience to build some knowledge, and why elements of work-based learning and pairing formal education with work is so important, because I think that's going to be especially true in the age of AI, where AI makes anybody can become good at something, but what's going to become more valuable, at least what I can tell, is business and industry knowledge. We'll start to get a premium.
I just want to talk about, we've implemented a technical career ladder, for example, in our engineers. That kind of thing is absolutely critical. I mean, we're only 70 people, but we've been built on the back of, like, Orica, one of our biggest investors, Chemical Engineering Research Group, and so we borrowed from the best practice already as a small company, understanding that we'll find it hard to keep talent as well, because we actually probably can't pay massive salaries, but we benchmark as well. We get everyone up to scratch. We do reviews. We have peer reviews. We also have principles like no one works alone, right? We have a principle that no one on anything works alone. They always have a peer, and that's really, really critical. So that you get that teamwork, ethos. You get to share, the soft skills. You get to participate. You get to be involved in things that actually aren't in your strict specialisation. So into management, into leadership, and things like that. Getting people into leadership quickly is important.
I love that. Catherine, do you want to add something? So one thing, Catherine, you mentioned this actually before we started our session, and Maddie, I think you've touched on this too, which is really and I want to talk a bit about, like, young people, which is to say that what we see in our data is that young people, and what I believe is that young people get a lot of climate education. That climate change, by the time you finish secondary school, is not a foreign topic. But I think, Maddie, you've talked multiple times and said, right, but like there's still not a connection between that climate education and the world of work. And Catherine, you've said young people have a lot of the skills we need already. They may not just realize it. So I'm curious, Catherine, I'll start with you. What's it going to take to bridge that gap where it turns out a lot of people have the skills to contribute to this work. They have the skills employers are looking for, but they don't know. They don't realize how to tell that story. How do we change that and make that connection point a lot clearer?
So I think it's panels like this one, and it's really starting to get that story out around the positives. So one of the things that we've been working with here in COP is with an organization called Futerra, who's led by a lady called Solitaire Townsend. And she has, I'm not going to say the word, but she has a very strong narrative around what she calls F* UK Doom. So this is a kind
It rhymes with Duck Doom.
Duck Doom, yeah. So Duck Doom is all about creating this sense of positivity around the fact that you can make a difference and that you can do something. So I think from our perspective, from a recruitment perspective, we are always trying to tell stories. And I'll just tell a very quick story about why we think this is important. So we have big conferences, and at a conference a couple of years ago, we had one of the scientists who had helped to create one of the COVID vaccines. She's a lady called Dr. Catherine Green, and she's based at the Jenner Institute in Oxford University. She's a massively inspirational person. Look her up. But she said that she had been involved with Sarah Gilbert in creating the AstraZeneca vaccine. And she spent 6 months doing this in very difficult circumstances. They injected the first person, and the BBC covered it. And then straight away on Facebook, a story came up that this person had died. And they hadn't died. They were fine. The vaccine was doing its work. And what she said was that she realized at that moment that it wasn't enough to be a brilliant scientist or a brilliant technologist. She actually had to be a brilliant storyteller, or the narrative was going to get away from her. And so that's where I think we all have a great responsibility, start building a positive narrative around climate change. It is happening, but actually we have many of the tools, we have a lot of the skills and a lot of the passion we need to make this happen. We just need to get that positive story out there. So it's a really exciting opportunity.
Yeah, if I can just add that, and it's kind of back to your point on, telling people that they can make a difference. I think like people or the students I talk to, they hear a lot of that. They hear you can make a change, you can contribute to climate action, but they don't know how. And I think what's missing is people in technical spaces doing a lot of really good work, coming out and being able to tell those stories to younger people. And actually the stories of what they're doing. Like, you probably get a lot of disengaged students, but you'll also get, a couple of students in there that'll go, that's what I want to do. And that's how you get a talent pipeline.
There's an organization based in the U.S. called Work on Climate. Highly recommend you check them out. They put out a survey and they asked people like, how do people think they can make the most impact on climate? And the first response was individual action. So, recycling at home. The second response, and the second response is kind of policy advocacy. And obviously, I think there's a narrative that kind of tells us that those are things we should do. And but I think it turns out that individual action often is hard to scale, doesn't deliver a lot of leverage. Policy advocacy is complicated. It's hard. There's often setbacks. Obviously, the politics of it can get in the way of what might feel like progress. But distant third was through work that people, not just young people, but people in general, could drive climate action. And I think what it turns out is like work is a part of, there's a lot of leverage there. You think about supply chain. If you can work a company like LinkedIn, if you can change how we operate our supply chain, I think MCI Carbon as a part of other companies' supply chain, like that makes a huge difference. That's a lot more leverage than recycling your milk jugs, So I think like that is something that we often need to figure out how we can tell that story, because so many people, if you care about climate, if you feel that climate anxiety, how to turn that climate anxiety to climate action often can be through what you do in your job. And I think there's, something how do we figure that out? I have one more question. Well, then we'll let anyone in the audience wants to ask us anything. But, it's clear that the demand for these skills are growing faster than supply. And, it's going to take an all of the above approach to build a workforce. But I say all of the above, what I mean is employers have to be involved. Government has to be involved. Education and training providers have to be involved. What I'm curious is, what's a model around building this workforce? Because if we have to drastically accelerate green skills development, what's a model you've seen in Australia or elsewhere that you think is promising? And if the type of thing that if it could be replicated or scaled is going to help us address this green talent challenge? Maybe Maddie, we can start with you.
I think I actually said a similar thing last year, and I still think it's true. We talked about 1.5 Academy and the way they're developing short-form educational content. And I think things like that are really important. And what's difficult is getting them into universities, but it's possible. And I think there's lots of great companies doing a lot of work on that. One good example is The Energy. Back in Australia, we have a company that do a lot. They do journalism, but they also do a lot around educational content and trying to get that to students and also professionals. I think that's really important. Universities can't skill students exactly the way industry wants them to be skilled. The other thing, like I see in the energy industry, is not well, it's a model that's done by a lot of other sectors, but in the energy industry, professionals don't take as much of a sense of responsibility around growing their sector and speaking to the next generation of jobs, right? A generation of workers. I have a unique perspective on that because we work with a lot of other clubs in the university, and we see how professionals from other sectors come, and they're so willing to share what they do and to inspire that next generation. It doesn't happen as much in energy. So I'd like to see that, and I've spoke to it before, but I'd like to see companies getting into education earlier.
I'll just say that I don't know. So 1.5 is a boot camp that does kind of like these intensive learnings. But their I think innovation was they figured out carbon accounting was a skill that signaled back to the point that Marcus made earlier that you were interested in working on climate and whether or not you would actually do carbon accounting. It was like a baseline skill. But the irony was Matthias, who's one of the co-founders of 1.5, had literally just texted me before you mentioned them. So I don't know how that connection happened, but that's pretty crazy.
Cosmic connections, that's fantastic. So as a major employer, we also work with universities around the world, around 200 universities. We make our software available for free so that the engineers can learn and train on a kind of real world environment. But the other thing I think is important is that sometimes the industry might think it knows what skills it needs, but also the students need to feedback. It's kind of a symbiosis because your generation will be the future. You're the ones that are actually going to create the next set of industrial deployments, the next kind of green innovations. So I think that the benefit for us is not just in kind of making stuff available to you guys, it's having that ongoing conversation. I know it's the same with our graduates. When they come in, they're starting to ask different questions, starting to change the way that we think about problems, and it's that dialogue. It gets back to your point about the collaboration. That's what's really valuable, and that's what's going to take us forwards, I think.
So we do a lot of work in Japan. Now, Japan, everyone says, is hard to do business with because they take a long time to make decisions. However, as Australians and the Japanese, we're very close, and culturally we are very appreciative of each other's cultures, which is a great symbiosis, really. So we just took an investment from a large cement company, and towards the end of the deal, the CEO said to me, "Do you know why we're really investing in you?" And what? And I said, "Well, our technology." And they said, "No, we want your innovation and we want your collaboration models because we're finding it hard to attract engineers to come and work for a cement company in Japan. It's not sexy, and it's not something that's that they think is going to be saving the world." And so it was a real eye-opener for me that the appreciation of how we think, how we incorporate people into the into these collaboration models, and how we put innovation at the center of what we do, not something that's at the side. And this is really appreciated. It's what gets us acceleration towards identifying the priorities, working out where people want to go and work, and then what I went back to about having the critical soft skills of critical thinking, of complex problem solving, but also working in teams. And we sent our first group came over from Japan. They came back, and their head of their R&D facility said, "I want to send all my people to Australia on this program because they've come back changed people." And that's really it's very rewarding for me to feel that we're actually making a difference in that. Across countries, cross-country collaboration around skills and opportunities. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that I've seen is that you really have to figure out how to align this work with the company's business interests. And one of those business interests is finding talent, and making them showing the current and prospective employees that these are things they care about. And I think one thing we've seen on LinkedIn is we actually had to create a feature where you could companies on their company page could actually add values they care about. And then they had to also add a link to like what that looked like. So for that cement company can say, hey, look, we actually care about emissions now. Look at the investments we've made. We have this, and we have a partner who's actually helping us do that work, because we know that cement is one of those hard to abate sectors. We have to find ways to address emissions. One example that I think one example that I think is really important is that employers just have to play a role in this. The way that most people are going to learn green skills is in the context of the job they have right now, or the job that employers trying to fill right now. So Iberdrola, big, Spain-based but global energy company, they have a subsidiary here in Brazil called Neoenergia. They actually created a school of electricians, and the school of electricians was created, to create because there's a major gender gap in the industry, and they want to have more women become electricians, but also they needed to hire electricians. So it's not just pure CSR. It's not there to exist because they want to do good in the world. They need to hire people for their own business. And so now, over hundreds of women have gone through the School for Electricians, 80% of which have gotten jobs, many of which at Iberdrola, at Neoenergia. So I think being able to connect some of these efforts specifically to business needs becomes really important, and that's how you unlock getting this out of the sustainability function and into other functions of the business where they can, deliver that scale. In HR, COP is not a conference that HR leaders tend to go to, but I often think HR becomes the linchpin for how to get this work done. We have a couple minutes left. I don't know if anybody in the audience wants to ask anything of this esteemed group panelists.
Yes. So hello guys, I'm Santiago. I'm 20 years old from Mexico, and this is my first COP, and I've been to Australia once. I loved it, especially how big Australia is with the sustainability and all that. It was very eye-opening for me. So right now I am working on my own startup with my brother Diego, where I turn invasive sargassum seaweed in the Caribbean into bioplastics. And my question is more involved in the technology aspect. I'm trying to develop a algorithm that is able to intercept sargassum before it arrives to the coast. So what advice do you have for young people like myself to get more involved in the AI space and in the green technologies? Thank you.
So being a technologist, I totally know where you're at, and I run an accelerator as well and part of a big innovation ecosystem. I'd say, find collaborators as early as possible. You can only do so much yourself, and you'll have a great idea, but it's actually joining up ideas is so much better. So find some mentors, find some people who believe in you, can advocate for you as well. They're really important. But look for collaborations. Also think about where do you want to be in 5 years' time, and then work back from there. And that'll give you a very good roadmap.
I'd build on that and say that we run a number of different hackathons and competitions, some with iChemie, some which are our own proprietary, and we run them also with our sister company, which is Schneider Electric. So maybe we can have a conversation at the end. I'll put you in touch with the people that run the competitions, because it sounds like a great opportunity to make a submission.
Anyone else want to ask a question, make a comment? She's a mayor. She can't help herself.
Can't help myself. Good morning. I'm just adding to the cosmic conscious. I'm Moira Weir from the city of Onkaparinga, hopefully home to the next COP, and we can welcome you all to South Australia. But I'm just going to do the cosmic consciousness. So last week I was at the Leaders Forum, and I met with the mayor of the town that has this problem. So I can put you in touch directly with him. And also because we've got the world's largest algal bloom off our coastline. And so I just put into, ChatGPT, what's the connection between this seaweed in Mexico and my algal bloom off my coast? And why are there must be something there. And I got some really good answers, and I wrote it up on a LinkedIn profile that same day. So I guess I'm saying, here's a story of my last week. It really reflects Marcus's "You're Not Alone." It's about storytelling. It's about the relationships of the tools that we all use. I'm a social worker by trade, but what I do know is I know how to solve problems. I know how to make sure that things get connected, and that the world is both small and big at the same time. And I think that skill set has certainly helped me do the job that I'm doing now. And no one would think, a social worker would be sitting here, being the mayor, listening to this. So that's my kind of, this is where the world's going. It's more hyper-connected intellectually and socially and through the tools and instruments that we've got. So just a reflection.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it's just so cool cosmic connections. That is great. We got to wrap up, so they got to get to the next session. I want to give each of you maybe 30 seconds to just kind of say a final word, whether it's something you've noticed at this COP maybe something at this COP that's giving you some hope. Because I think, I was at an event last night where a speaker said, I know a lot of us are feeling headwinds, but the truth is there's a lot of tailwinds. Regardless, we all just love wind, and it was at a renewable energy event. So I thought that was like a positive spin. Duck Doom. Curious if there's anything that you've seen this week that's just giving you a lot of hope.
It's completely off topic, but the power of local action and local governance as well, and how much people are talking about that now, it has really inspired me, this COP, because the Mayor of Adelaide said last night that cities are the implementation arms of policies, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So my kind of flippant answer to this would be Duck Doom and Cosmic Connections, which I kind of love. But the other theme that we have here is that we really believe in this concept of the Muti Rao that the presidency is supporting. But we want to take it one further. We want to call for a Muti Rao for industry. We think that there's a real role for, basically the implementation isn't going to happen without industry being there. But we are ready to fully play our part and to contribute to the Muti Rao. So that will be my final thought.
So we all talk about values, but how do we actually live our values? And that's through principles. So and in fact the leading principle for my organisation is this: when you go into a discussion, you meet someone, then think about what is your role in this, which hat are you wearing, and what do you have to contribute. And when you're talking, talk like you know and listen like you don't. And if you take that into every meeting and encounter you have, you'll be encompassing many, many values in that principle. And that's the one that my team, my people, adhere by.
I'll just wrap by saying one of the other innovations that they have for this COP was this SB COP, Sustainable Business COP process. LinkedIn has been co-chairing the Green Skills and Jobs Working Group. Very excited. That was one of the focus areas. And I think whatever happens for all future COPs, I think, Catherine, to your point, this platform as a way to engage business and industry to be part of the solution, because this is where action happens, is going to be essential. Thank you to our panelists. Such a great conversation. I'm so glad we got to do this here in Belém. Thank you all for coming.